Welcome to the Legacy Leaders Podcast. Are you doing the best for your client to help them create their legacy? Are you creating a plan that goes far beyond finances to help people ensure that it becomes the driving force behind all decisions? On this podcast, hosts Katie Beth Hand and Stan Miller will help you with growing your practice and your clients' peace of mind. Together, they bring the best and brightest minds to share with you how to help your clients develop their best legacy. And now, here are your hosts, Katie Beth and Stan.
Welcome to Legacy Leaders Podcast. My name is Jamie Moore, principal and founder of the law firm of Moore and Kerbaway, focus being wealth protection planning for human beings, and of course, transition without regret for our business owners. I'm very excited and pleased to be able to interview a colleague of mine on another platform I've been involved with for a long time. Have tremendous amount of respect and admiration for John. Listen to many of his teachings and podcasts, so you're really in for a treat today. You may want to get out your pad of paper and pen, because writing reinforces learning. Go figure. Back in Old Testament days, it's called a writing instrument and something to scribble on. And I'm sure you're going to want to do that. So welcome today, John.
Thank you, Jamie.
Maybe start, why don't you start, if you don't mind, just tell us a little bit about your backstory. I've heard it a couple of times, but it's always fascinating to me.
Well, as you know, I've written a couple of books, and on the flyleaf is my favorite description of my backstory, which says people call John a serial entrepreneur, but the truth of the matter is he's just chronically unemployable. Don't work and play well with others, tend to make my own decisions for better or worse, have a lot of experience. And most of my experience absolutely meets the definition of experience is what you get when you don't get what you want. You know, I've been in manufacturing. I've had an import-export company. I had a healthcare consulting firm that worked all over the country. I've been a speaker. And for the last, 30 years, I've been a coach to business owners and only coaching business owners. I don't do strategic retreats. I don't do team building. I don't do, rope courses or trust falls. All that stuff, didn't like it. I just like working with business owners. And that led me, as more and more of my clients became our age, yours and mine, Jamie, led me into exit planning. So I've been specializing in exit planning now for about 13 years. First certified with BEI, and then with EPI, and then with IEPA. And out of that sprang how you and I know each other most, which is the Exit Map set of exercises for owners that are planning a transition. And now I focus on selling those to advisors all over the country.
I think we first met at a BEI, a Business Enterprise Institute, by the way. That's what it stands for. Summit. Got to chatting, and you were just kind of getting started with your polarization and accumulation of all that wisdom into what we now know as the Exit Map, which is just a phenomenal program. The iteration of that, John, did it start kind of like with a gnawing at the back of your head, or kind of doggone it, there's got to be a different way to do this, or you thought of it when you were 4 years old, or when did that kind of pop up?
No, unfortunately, I wish I could say that any portion of my life was carefully planned, but that would be so totally untrue. I had a very bright young MBA graduate working for me once in California, and she came to me one day and said, I'm trying to figure out my career plan. Could you please share with me your career plan? And I just burst out in laughter. And, I wasn't not even familiar with the term plan. Yeah. No, what happened was I was a business broker, and I was brokering Main Street businesses. And I was working on a questionnaire that would help me better understand how ready they were. And the whole term exit readiness wasn't even around back then. And I did run into BEI and found out that there were other ways to transition companies other than just putting them up for sale, listing them on the internet and interviewing buyers. And that's really what I had been looking for. When you're, as a broker, when you're a hammer, everything's a nail. And, people come to me and say, can you get me out of my business? And like most brokers, I would say, sure, I'll list it on the internet and I'll interview buyers. When I went to BEI, I first learned about internal transfers, ESOPs, management buyouts, got an education in family succession. And that's really what I wanted to do. So in the meantime, had been working on this assessment, and I had a very clever, and still have for 19 years, a very clever employee who happens to be a dynamite programmer when she's not doing 5,000 other things. And I asked Christy, I said, can we get this on the internet? And she said, well, yeah, we could do something. So we put it together. We built the algorithm and we put it out there. And like every project that goes on the internet, we just sat back and watched, like the commercials, the ticker goes 1, 2, 3, 5, 1,000, 10,000, 50,000, 100,000. And if you believe that, then I have a bridge I can sell you. Because like most such things, we put it on the internet and watched it carefully for a long, long time, and nothing happened. So I started offering it to advisors, and they said, this is a good assessment, but we don't understand where we go from this. So I started building tools that really were initially just kind of sales and marketing add-ons. If you do this, if you buy this assessment, if you subscribe to this assessment, we'll also give you this cash normalization spreadsheet. And we'll also give you this seller sanity check. And we'll also give you this management assessment and this owner centricity quiz. And finally, it was, I guess, about 2019. I was just looking at the time frame for something else we're doing. And it was about 2019, 2020, where we put it all together and said, okay, this is a process. This is what you should be using first. This is what you should be using second. This is what you should be using third. And this is what you should come out with at the other end. And that was okay, but it wasn't good enough. And although we were selling some, my director of business development, Hannah Chalker, was the one that really hit me over the head. We were doing training. We were doing case study training with our sales staff. And we got to the end of the case study and they said, well, what's the plan? And I said, well, the plan should be obvious from the case study. I mean, his daughter's going to take over the business. He's got to get somebody in sales. He has to move forward with this. He needs to, take care of documentation of this part of the company. And they said, well, how do we tell the advisors we're working with all that? We don't know how to do that. Only you know how to do that. And the advisors aren't you. They don't have 30 years of working with business owners. And so that's, the blinding glimpse of the obvious. So we went back in 23 and we spent all of 23 re-engineering it so that it now helps the owner understand what the options are, and it lets the owner make the choices. Because, I've worked with owners for a long time, and so have you, Jamie. And, this isn't a surprise. Owners make decisions. They make decisions every single day. All they need is information. And so, we re-engineered it so the owner would discover the options himself with an advisor helping guide. And the owner could say, I see now. I need to do this and this if I want that to be my result. And so that's really where we are today. And we're proud of it because we're now selling it to a substantial number of advisors that don't know how to give business advice, but really, really want to help their clients.
Well, it gives that blessing in reverse, John. The comments I always get are, well, aren't you just going to tell me what to do? And, well, no, if you knew that, you wouldn't need me at all. This is a process, so step by step by step, and lots of questions, lots of interaction, and we're going to discover together. And one time after a seminar, a guy come up and said, hey, what do you think about my idea to do blah, 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 blah? And I said, I don't care. So you don't care. What do you mean you don't care? So if it's legal, moral, and ethical, and it works for you, it's my job is to help you accomplish the goal that you set. Well, how do I do that? That was always my struggle until I found you and your program. And now we talk about process.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What would you
it's
say is some of the common issues that you help with owners? The misconception I have that it's like a light switch. I'll just wait and wait and wait, and I'll flip it at the end, and I'll get the heck out of here.
sure,
And that's the one I fight. What's the one you fight?
sure. Well, everybody in this industry has the valuation issue. You know, owners typically, I saw a study a few months back that said owners typically overestimate the value of their business by about 35%. And it's the baby. I get it. Nobody says, "Oh, look at my baby. Isn't it ugly?" But, one of the big issues that advisors have is you've got two choices. When the owner tells you, "I think my business is worth $5 million," you, in your vast experience, think it's probably worth more like 3 or 3.5 or something like that. You can either get in their face about it, which I don't like to do, and say, "Oh no, your business isn't worth that much." Well, that's not a great way to start a relationship with a client.
No.
Wrong, wrong,
Yeah.
although I did say that to John Brown once in one of our conversations, the attorney that founded BEI. And he said, "Well, I tell him that. I have no problem." And I was like, "Yeah, you're a lawyer, John. You do that all the time." But I don't
If I
do that.
want you to answer the
Yeah.
question, I'll give it to you, right?
Yeah, right. And then, the other alternative is for the advisor to say, "Oh, well, we should go out and get an appraisal of your company." Well, when you're working with a client, especially in exit planning, when a client is willing to sit down and discuss what they have not been willing to discuss before, putting that entire process on hold for a month or two while a third party valuation company gathers their information and does their analysis and magic and comes out with their report is not the best way to advance your relationship with the client. So, that's why we came up with the seller sanity check. That's an excellent example of how the journey between the advisor and the owner, they travel that road together. So we say, "You think your company's worth $5 million? Let's put that in there. Here's your cash flow. Here's the lending standards of the SBA, which is not universal, but a lot of banks use it. It's a good starting place. Guess what? You can't cover the debt service for a lender to give it to you. So I'm not telling you that your company's not worth that. That's not my place. You may have intellectual property. You may have recurring revenue. You may have long-term customer contracts. You may have lots of things that makes your company worth that much. All I'm telling you is a bank would not lend that much money on your company. Now, what can you do about that?"
Love it. Got a common enemy in a sense, the bank, and then it makes them do that dangerous activity called thinking, and then we have an actual dialogue going on. I know in my work, there's often misconceptions, and God knows where they come from. But there they are, they're just stated, and that's the way things are, and don't confuse me with the facts. And there are some issues too that always come up. What would you say are some of those issues and misconceptions that business owners have?
They're usually shocked at a buyer's concern about risk.
Mm,
They have lived with the risk every single day. They're used to it. They're thick-skinned about it. Yeah, there's a risk that our customers will leave. There's a risk that, my key employees will leave, or that I won't be able to perform, or that I won't be able to get raw materials. I mean, they deal with risk in 100 different ways on a daily basis. And they're always surprised, sometimes shocked, and certainly sometimes irked by the fact that a buyer is concerned about these risks and wants some assurances that this isn't going to happen on day 2 of their ownership.
yeah. Yeah, what's the story about? Boy, look at my baby, and it's uglier than you know what, and last year, geez, that's a real ugly baby.
Yeah,
It might be true, but you don't want to say the obvious, right?
right. Well, and risk is
Go
valuation.
ahead. Go ahead.
I'm just saying risk is valuation. The more risk a buyer perceives,
Yeah.
the less he's willing to pay for the organization. And they're like, no, those risks aren't real. Those risks never happen. Those risks aren't a problem. You shouldn't be discounting from the value of my company. That's usually a big obstacle.
One of the main things I've learned from you is sometimes on the back end to take a look at the de-risking, and you add immediate value, just things that they would prefer not to think about.
Sure.
What would you say, maybe a stinker of a question that you've learned through the work that you're doing?
Well, as you know, we promote a coaching approach. I've learned that when you go into a business owner and try and lead with your expertise, you're pretty much asking them to challenge it. I'm the best, I'm the smartest, I'm the most experienced, I've done millions of these, I've done much bigger companies than yours. Whatever you do to establish that I have a superior knowledge base than you do is not going to get you the client. What gets you the client is, and it's especially in the financial planning industry, it's used so often, the famous Teddy Roosevelt quote: people don't care what you know until they know that you care.
Yeah. Yeah, or Yogi Berra, you got to be awful careful if you don't know where you're going because you might not get there.
Right? Yeah. Yogi was a genius. He was just brilliant.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Someone asked me this the other day and I kind of struggled with the answer. So I thought I'd pick on you, maybe help me answer. What do you like best about what you do?
I am seriously ADD. Every single business owner is different, and every single business is different. There is no formula. For a while, I mentioned when we were talking about my bio, I was in healthcare, and we were building physician hospital networks in the early days of HMOs to negotiate big contracts with HMOs. Our formula was the same. I got bored with it. You parachute in, you say, I know what you need to do. Here's our format. Here's what you do. This is how it happens. Do this and this, and it'll come out that way. It was lucrative, but it wasn't a lot of fun. This is a lot of fun. This is, you erase the slate every time you sit down with a new client because it's not going to be the same as anything you've done before.
It's the same for them as well. Sometimes the comments I get is there's no particular agenda. We're just going to get acquainted to get started and tell me about you. Tell me about you. Tell me about your business. And they look at you. You really want to know? I thought we were going to start at the end. No, let's start at the front end. And
right.
Up comes the story. And gosh, you could write a book I thought about doing that one time. Just capture some of these amazing stories as little cliff notes and gather them together by topic. Cement guys or construction guys, and put a little academic storyteller thing together because they're all so fascinating.
Yeah, I was just coming back today. I met with a client. He's been one of my clients, my coaching clients he was for a while and then he went away and he came back. He's been back about 6 or 7 years. Started his company in his very early 30s, has had it for, about a decade and a half. From a ground zero start, from a concept. I think I'll do this, and sold it about 6 months ago for a very high 8-figure number that will set his family up, and his children and grandchildren will never have to worry about working. Those are great stories. Those are the stories I live for. I don't take any credit for it. I mean, he would have gotten there anyway. But it was sure a lot of fun going on the journey with him.
Part of the thing you've taught us too, John, that didn't occur to me initially in working so long as a estate planning attorney with individual families, which have individuals, and then the business owner and the dynamics and culture there. And you began to talk to us about the ripple, the culture, what it have on the community. If we box this up, we don't affect not just the owner, but the people that connected that. It was really kind of an eye-opener for me. What would you say to us about that?
Yeah. No, it's, I've And most of my owners are very conscious of the spread. It's not just them and their families, it's their employees and their employees' families. And, we're here in Texas, and it's not unusual when we get out of the big cities in Texas to be dealing with somebody who's the principal employer in their town. The entire town may revolve around that company.
Wow. Well, John, how do we find you? What's a good way? How do we find JD?
Oh, well, you can find me at exitmap.com. That's where the tools are. Certainly, there's a John F. Dini, D-I-N-I, website.com where my books and stuff are, but really Exit Map is where I put up most of my stuff. And if you're interested in my exit planning blog, I put up stuff about once a month at the title. I'm only bringing it up not because it's not available elsewhere, but because no business owner has ever asked me why it's titled this way. It's awakeat2o'clock.com. And every business owner knows why it's called Awake at 2 o'clock.
Amen and hallelujah. Yeah. Stamping on the flaming ducks at 2 a.m. God bless you. So that's exit, EXITMAP, exit map, right?
Yes.
.com. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, John. It's been absolutely amazing listening to you today. We could go on for a long time. Maybe we'll continue this on our own, but it's a blessing to everyone that's going to hear you today on Legacy Leaders Podcast. And hook up with John, and it will be one of the best journeys you've made as an advisor or owner or whatever else you have going on in life. We're here to help you succeed. And life should be a joy and a journey and not a destination. And that's what we're all about. So thanks for joining us. See you next time.
Thanks so much for having me, Jamie. It's been a pleasure. Have a great day.
Very welcome. You bet.
You've been listening to the Legacy Leaders Podcast with Katie Beth Hand and Stan Miller. For more information on them and the show, please visit pinnaclelegacylaw.com. If you like what you've learned today, do share the program with your friends and subscribe wherever podcasts are found.